The morning of my college graduation started like every other significant day in my life, with my family finding new ways to remind me I was the disappointment. I sat in my cramped studio apartment, carefully pressing the wrinkles out of my cap and gown while listening to Mom on the phone through paper-thin walls. "Yes, we'll be there for the ceremony," she was saying to someone, probably Aunt Linda. "Though honestly, it's just a formality at this point. 4 years of barely scraping by, living in that awful little place, working at that coffee shop. I keep telling David we should have just put the money toward Marcus's law degree instead." Marcus, my golden child older brother who'd sailed through Harvard Law on Dad's connections and credit cards, never working a day in his life. The same Marcus who was currently living in Mom and Dad's pool house at 28, finding himself between trust fund disbursements. I pulled my phone from the charger and saw the usual family group chat. Everyone discussing graduation plans without actually including me in the conversation. Dad had written, "Reserved parking for 2 p.m. ceremony. Marcus, bring the good camera. We'll make this quick and get dinner after." No one had asked if I wanted to go to dinner. No one had asked if I had other plans. For 4 years, they'd treated my education like an expensive hobby they were funding out of obligation, not investment. Every semester, Dad would sigh dramatically while writing the tuition check, muttering about throwing good money after bad. What they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was that I'd been working 60-hour weeks at 3 different jobs to cover my living expenses. The coffee shop job they knew about because they'd seen me there once and spent 20 minutes lecturing me about wasting my degree. They didn't know about the late-night tutoring sessions where I helped struggling students with organic chemistry, or the research assistant position I'd held for 3 years under Dr. Patricia Hendricks in the molecular biology lab. They especially didn't know about the conversations I'd been having with Harvard Medical School's admissions committee for the past 6 months. I arrived at the university's main auditorium 90 minutes early, partly to help with setup as requested by Dean Morrison, but mostly to avoid the inevitable pre-ceremony lecture from Dad about realistic expectations and backup plans. The morning was crisp and clear, one of those perfect May days that made the campus look like something from a postcard. "Sarah." Dr. Hendricks spotted me immediately, her face lighting up with genuine pride. "There's our star researcher. Are you ready for today?" Dr. Hendricks was the kind of professor who actually cared about her students as human beings, not just grade point averages. She'd been my faculty advisor since sophomore year and had become something of a mentor. More importantly, she'd been the one to recommend me for the research scholarship that had been quietly covering my lab fees and textbook costs. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said, adjusting my cap nervously. "My family's coming, so that should be interesting." Her expression softened. In 3 years of working together, she'd gotten enough glimpses into my family dynamics to understand what interesting meant. "Well, I think they're going to be very surprised today." Before I could ask what she meant, Dean Morrison approached with his characteristic warm smile. "Sarah. Perfect timing. I wanted to run through the special announcements with you one more time." "Special announcements?" My stomach dropped. I thought I was just receiving my diploma with everyone else. Dean Morrison and Dr. Hendricks exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Well, yes, but there are a few other items we need to address. Don't worry, it's all good news. We'll brief you fully in about an hour." Families began filtering into the auditorium around 1:30, and I spotted my parents immediately. Dad wore his "I'm doing this under protest" expression, the same one he'd worn to every school play, science fair, and academic award ceremony throughout my childhood. Mom had dressed appropriately for the occasion but kept checking her watch as if she had somewhere more important to be. Marcus arrived fashionably late, of course, wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying the good camera Dad had mentioned, though he spent more time taking selfies than actual family photos. My younger sister Emma sat between Mom and Dad, scrolling through her phone with the practiced boredom of a high school junior who'd been dragged to another family obligation. They'd saved me a seat technically, but it was at the end of the row where I'd have to climb over people to reach it. The universal family seating arrangement that said, "You're included but barely." "There she is," Dad said as I approached, his voice carrying that particular tone of resigned tolerance. "The graduate. How does it feel knowing this is finally over?" "Expensive," Mom added helpfully. $23,000 a year for 4 years. Plus living expenses, books, that computer you insisted you needed. Don't forget the coffee shop uniform," Marcus chimed in, lowering his sunglasses to look at me. Though I guess you'll be keeping that job for a while longer, right? Market's pretty tough for... What was your major again? Molecular biology, I said quietly. Right. Molecular biology. He said it like I'd told him my major was underwater basket weaving. Very practical. Lots of opportunities there, I'm sure. Emma didn't look up from her phone. Can we just get this over with? I'm supposed to meet Jessica at the mall at 4. I took my seat and tried to focus on the positive. In 2 hours this would all be over. I'd have my diploma, I'd be officially done with undergraduate studies, and I could move forward with the next phase of my life. Whatever that looked like. The ceremony began promptly at 2 p.m. with the traditional processional. Students filed in by department and I walked with my fellow biology majors, most of whom had family members cheering enthusiastically from the audience. I could see my parents in their seats, Dad already looking like he was calculating how much longer this would take. Dean Morrison took the podium with his usual commanding presence. He was the kind of academic leader who commanded respect without demanding it, soft-spoken but authoritative, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like Central Casting's idea of a distinguished university dean. Welcome, families and friends, to our 156th commencement ceremony, he began. Today we celebrate not just the completion of academic requirements, but the beginning of new chapters in the lives of 847 remarkable young people. The opening remarks followed the standard template: acknowledgments of faculty, recognition of families, reminders about cell phone courtesy. I half-listened while scanning the audience, noting which families had brought elaborate flower arrangements and professional photographers. The Hendersons in the third row had what appeared to be a small film crew documenting their daughter's graduation. My family sat in their assigned seats like they were enduring a mandatory corporate training session. Before we begin conferring degrees, Dean Morrison continued, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some exceptional achievements within this graduating class. Each year, a small number of students distinguish themselves not just through academic excellence, but through research contributions that advance our understanding of their chosen fields. I felt a flutter of nervousness. Several of my classmates had done impressive research projects. Jennifer Martinez had published a paper on sustainable agriculture. Robert Kim had developed a new statistical model for predicting climate patterns. I hoped my work with Dr. Hendricks on protein synthesis mechanisms would at least get an honorable mention. This year's recipient of the Outstanding Undergraduate Research Award has spent 3 years investigating novel approaches to protein folding that could revolutionize how we understand Alzheimer's disease progression. Her work has already been accepted for publication in the Journal of Molecular Biology, and she's been invited to present her findings at the International Conference on Neurodegenerative Diseases this fall. My heart started beating faster. The protein folding research was my project, but I'd had no idea it was being considered for any awards. Dr. Hendricks had mentioned that the paper was accepted for publication, but I hadn't realized the significance of the journal or the conference invitation. I glanced at my parents. Dad was whispering something to Mom, probably calculating parking meter time. Sarah Elizabeth Thompson, would you please join me on stage? The sound of my name through the auditorium speakers hit like a physical force. Several hundred people turned to look at me, including my family, whose expressions ranged from confused to mildly annoyed that I was delaying the ceremony. I walked to the stage on unsteady legs, accepting the Crystal Award from Dean Morrison while camera flashes went off around the auditorium. This was surreal. In 4 years of college, my family had never seen me receive any kind of recognition. Most of my academic achievements had been announced through emails or department newsletters they'd never bothered to read. Furthermore, Dean Morrison continued, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium sound system, Ms. Thompson's research excellence has earned her a full scholarship to Harvard Medical School, where she'll be joining their MD-PhD program this fall. The scholarship covers full tuition, living expenses, and research funding for the next 8 years. The auditorium erupted in applause. I stood on the stage holding my award, trying to process what had just happened. Harvard Medical School. Full scholarship. 8 years of funding. This was everything I'd dreamed about but had been too afraid to hope for. I looked out at the audience and found my family. Dad's mouth was hanging open. Mom had gone completely pale. Marcus had actually removed his sunglasses, staring at me like I'd suddenly sprouted wings. Even Emma had looked up from her phone. The scholarship committee was particularly impressed, Dean Morrison continued, by Ms. Thompson's ability to maintain a 4.0 GPA while working multiple jobs to support herself. They noted that her dedication to both academic excellence and financial independence demonstrates the kind of character they seek in future physician researchers. Working multiple jobs. Financial independence. I watched my parents' faces as the implications hit them. They'd spent 4 years complaining about the cost of my education, never realizing that I'd been covering most of my actual expenses myself. The tuition they'd grudgingly paid was only part of the story. Ms. Thompson will begin her studies at Harvard this fall, where she'll be working with Dr. Amanda Foster, one of the world's leading researchers in neurodegenerative diseases. We expect great things from this exceptional young woman. I somehow made it back to my seat through continued applause, still clutching the Crystal Award. My roommates, fellow biology majors who'd become friends over late-night study sessions, were beaming at me with genuine excitement. "Sarah, that's incredible," whispered Jessica, who'd been my lab partner for 2 years. "Harvard Medical School. We had no idea you were even applying." That was intentional. I'd kept my medical school applications private because I couldn't bear the thought of my family's reaction if I'd been rejected. Better to apply quietly and deal with disappointment alone than to give them another opportunity to lecture me about unrealistic expectations. The rest of the degree conferral proceeded normally, but I barely heard any of it. My mind was spinning with the reality of what had just happened. Harvard Medical School. Full funding. MD-PhD program. I was going to be a doctor and a researcher. I was going to spend the next 8 years at one of the most prestigious medical schools in the world, working with leading experts in neurodegenerative diseases. And my family had just learned all of this at the same time as several hundred strangers. When the ceremony concluded and families began gathering on the lawn for photos, I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd been so focused on just getting through graduation that I hadn't really thought about the aftermath. How do you navigate family dinner when your parents have just discovered that their disappointment daughter is actually heading to Harvard? Dad reached me first, his expression unreadable. "Harvard Medical School," he said slowly, like he was testing the words. "Full scholarship." "Yes," I said simply. "When were you planning to mention this?" Mom had appeared beside him, her voice tight with what I couldn't tell was anger or embarrassment or confusion. "I wanted to wait until I was certain," I said. "Medical school acceptance is incredibly competitive. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up." "Get our hopes up?" Marcus had joined the conversation and he looked genuinely shaken. "Sarah, this is Harvard Medical School. This is huge. This is bigger than huge." For the first time in my adult life, my brother was looking at me with something approaching respect. It was disorienting. "The dean said you've been working multiple jobs," Mom said quietly. "Why didn't you tell us you needed more money? We could have helped with living expenses." This was delicate territory. How do you explain to your parents that you'd been supporting yourself because you were tired of every dollar coming with a lecture about gratitude and responsibility? How do you tell them that you'd chosen financial independence over family assistance because the assistance always came with strings attached? "I wanted to prove I could do it myself," I said, which was true if incomplete. "But honey," Mom continued, and her voice had taken on a tone I rarely heard directed at me, something almost approaching maternal pride. "You didn't have to prove anything. We're your parents. We want to support your dreams." I looked at her carefully. This was the same woman who'd spent 4 years asking when I was going to get serious about my future. The same woman who'd suggested I consider community college to save money on this experiment. The same woman who'd introduced me to neighbors as our daughter who's studying something with science. "I appreciate that," I said diplomatically. "But it worked out for the best." The scholarship committee specifically mentioned financial independence as a factor in their decision. Dr. Hendricks appeared at my elbow, saving me from the increasingly awkward family dynamics. "Sarah, there are some people from Harvard who'd like to meet you. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course," I said gratefully. "Harvard people." Dad's voice had taken on a different quality, the tone he used when talking to Marcus's law school professors or anyone else he considered important. "What kind of Harvard people?" "Dr. Amanda Foster flew in from Boston specifically for today's ceremony," Dr. Hendricks explained. "She's the researcher Sarah will be working with." She wanted to meet Sarah and discuss some preliminary research ideas. Dr. Foster came here? Today. Mom was now looking at me like I'd somehow transformed into a different person. From Harvard. The medical school takes their scholarship recipients very seriously, Dr. Hendricks said. Especially someone with Sarah's research potential. Her protein folding work has implications far beyond what most undergraduates achieve. I could see the calculations happening in my parents' heads. Harvard professor. Flying in specifically to meet their daughter. Research potential. This was the kind of academic recognition they understood and valued. The kind they'd seen directed at Marcus but never at me. We'd love to meet Dr. Foster, Dad said quickly. Wouldn't we, honey? We'd love to hear more about Sarah's research opportunities. 20 minutes later, I found myself in the surreal position of watching my parents hang on every word of Dr. Amanda Foster, a woman who'd traveled from Boston to discuss my research future. Dr. Foster was everything I'd imagined, brilliant, accomplished, and genuinely excited about the work we'd be doing together. Sarah's undergraduate research is remarkably sophisticated, Dr. Foster was explaining to my captivated family. Most students at her level are still learning basic laboratory techniques. Sarah has identified novel protein interactions that could lead to early intervention strategies for Alzheimer's patients. Early intervention, Dad repeated like he was taking mental notes. That sounds very important. It could change how we approach neurodegenerative diseases, Dr. Foster confirmed. Sarah's work has the potential to help millions of people. That's why Harvard was so eager to secure her for our program. Marcus, who'd been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. What kind of timeline are we talking about? For the research, I mean. The MD-PhD program is 8 years, Dr. Foster explained. 4 years of medical school coursework, then 3 to 4 years focused on research and dissertation. By the time Sarah graduates, she'll be both a practicing physician and a research scientist. She'll have her choice of positions at any major medical center or research institution in the world. Any major medical center, Mom repeated softly. In the world. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Dr. Foster outlining research opportunities, potential collaborations with other institutions, and the kind of career trajectory I could expect. My family listened with the kind of attention they usually reserved for Marcus's law school stories or Dad's business meetings. When Dr. Foster finally excused herself to catch her flight back to Boston, promising to stay in touch over the summer, my family and I were left standing on the lawn in awkward silence. So, Emma said finally, I guess you're really smart? It would have been funny if it wasn't so representative of how little my family actually knew about my academic life. Emma was 17. She'd lived in the same house with me for most of her life, but she'd apparently never noticed that I'd graduated valedictorian from high school, earned a full scholarship to college, or spent the last 4 years maintaining perfect grades while working multiple jobs. I've always been really smart, I said gently. You just never asked. That hit harder than I'd intended. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Marcus cleared his throat. Look, Sarah, he said, and his voice had lost its usual condescending edge. I think we owe you an apology. A big one. We haven't been paying attention. To what you were accomplishing, I mean. You've been working multiple jobs, Mom said, and she sounded almost stricken. While maintaining perfect grades. While doing research that impressed Harvard Medical School. And we've been treating you like. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We all knew how they'd been treating me. Like the family disappointment, I finished quietly. Dad winced. Sarah, honey, that's not. We never thought you were a disappointment. I looked at him steadily. Dad, 3 hours ago you whispered to Mom that you were finally done wasting money on this failure. The color drained from his face. He'd forgotten I was sitting close enough to hear him, or maybe he just hadn't cared at the time. I didn't mean. That was just. I was frustrated about the expense, not about you personally. You told Aunt Linda that the money would have been better spent on Marcus's law degree, I continued. You've introduced me to your colleagues as our daughter who's studying something with science. You gave Marcus a new BMW for graduating high school, but when I graduated valedictorian, you took us to Applebee's. Each example hit like a physical blow. I wasn't trying to be cruel, But 4 years of accumulated dismissal and condescension had to be addressed if we were going to have any kind of honest relationship moving forward. I think, Mom said carefully, that we've made some serious mistakes in how we've supported you. Or failed to support you. The question now, I said, is what happens next? It was a fair question. In 3 months, I'd be moving to Boston to begin medical school. 8 years of education stretched ahead of me, followed by residency, fellowship, and hopefully a career in academic medicine. I was about to embark on a path that would likely keep me busy and geographically distant for the next decade. Did I want my family to be part of that journey? Did they want to be part of it? And if so, how did we rebuild a relationship that had been based on their fundamental misunderstanding of who I was and what I was capable of? We'd like to be better, Dad said finally. We'd like to understand what you're doing and support it properly. If you'll give us the chance. We're proud of you, Mom added, and her voice caught slightly. We should have been proud of you all along, but we're proud of you now. Harvard Medical School, Sarah. Our daughter is going to Harvard Medical School. That sounds wonderful, Dad said, though I could tell he was still processing the fact that his failure daughter had been personally recruited by Harvard Medical School. The position pays $48,000 for 3 months, I continued. Plus research publication bonuses. Dr. Hendricks thinks we'll have 2 more papers accepted before I leave for Boston. $48,000 for a summer research position. That was more than Marcus had made in his entire first year out of law school, back when he was actually practicing law instead of finding himself in the pool house. 48,000, Emma repeated. For 3 months. Research scientists are well compensated, I said. Especially when their work has commercial applications. The protein folding research has already attracted interest from 3 pharmaceutical companies. I could see my family recalculating everything they thought they knew about my career prospects. This wasn't just academic achievement. This was practical financial success. The kind of success they understood and respected. Sarah, Marcus said slowly, I think I owe you a really big apology. Like a really, really big apology. We all do, Mom said firmly. Starting with dinner tonight. A proper celebration dinner. Wherever you want to go. And dessert, Emma added. Really good dessert. Like expensive dessert. I looked at my family, my flawed, dismissive, occasionally impossible family, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not for perfection but for better. For the possibility that they could learn to see me as I actually was, rather than as their preconceived notion of what I should be. I'd like that, I said. But can we go somewhere that doesn't have a kids' menu? I'm 22 and heading to Harvard Medical School. I think I've earned the right to eat somewhere with cloth napkins. Dad laughed. Actually laughed, not the polite chuckle he usually offered when I attempted humor. Cloth napkins it is. The fanciest restaurant in town. Our future doctor deserves the best. Future doctor. Our future doctor. It was the first time I'd heard genuine pride in his voice when he talked about my future, and it meant more than I'd expected. As we walked toward the parking lot, Dr. Hendricks caught up with us one more time. Sarah, I forgot to mention, Harvard called this morning. Dr. Foster wanted me to tell you that they've arranged housing in graduate student apartments near the medical school. Fully furnished, utilities included. You won't need to worry about finding a place or dealing with security deposits. That's incredibly generous, Mom said, and I could tell she was starting to understand the level of investment Harvard was making in my education. They also mentioned, Dr. Hendricks continued with a slight smile, that the scholarship includes an annual stipend for conference travel and research expenses. $25,000 per year, on top of tuition and living expenses. $25,000 per year for research expenses. I was beginning to understand that this wasn't just a scholarship. This was Harvard Medical School investing in my potential as a future leader in medical research. My family was beginning to understand it too. As we reached Dad's car, he turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between amazement and remorse. Sarah, I need you to know something. When I said I was done wasting money on this failure, I wasn't talking about you personally. I was talking about, well, I thought I was talking about a degree that wouldn't lead anywhere practical. I know, Dad. But that's not an excuse, he continued. I should have asked more questions. I should have taken more interest in what you were actually studying and achieving. I should have been a better father. You can be a better father starting now, I said. If you want to be. I do want to be, he said quietly. We all do. The drive home was different from any family car ride I could remember. Instead of Marcus dominating the conversation with stories about his latest internship or networking event, everyone wanted to hear about my research, my plans for medical school, and my long-term career goals. For the first time in years, I was the center of positive family attention. Not because I'd caused a problem or needed correction, but because they were genuinely interested in my life and proud of my achievements. It would take time to rebuild trust and establish new patterns of interaction. 4 years of dismissal and condescension wouldn't disappear overnight. But as we pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The possibility that my family might actually become people I wanted to spend time with. That evening, over dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, complete with cloth napkins as promised, Dad raised his glass for a toast. To Dr. Sarah Thompson, he said, his voice carrying genuine pride and affection. Our daughter, the Harvard Medical School scholar, the published researcher, and the future leader in medical science. We're sorry we didn't see your potential sooner, but we see it now and we couldn't be prouder. To Sarah, the rest of the family echoed, raising their glasses. As I sat there, surrounded by family members who were finally seeing me clearly for the first time, I realized that sometimes the best graduation gift isn't something you receive. It's something you give yourself. The gift of proving once and for all exactly who you are and what you're capable of achieving. Harvard Medical School was just the beginning.